welcome to another episode of Jim's Home and Garden. Okay, some seeds that we've got here that I collected last year. These are Aquilegia seeds, and these were basically saved off the seed heads of the top of the flowers. If you look back at the video, you'll see that they're nice little black seeds. Now, Aquilegias are really easy to grow. You could literally cast these seeds on the ground, but it takes a few years for them to grow. So all I'm going to do is get a seed tray, put in one of these little modules. I've just filled it full of compost here. Now all I'm going to do is with a lollipop stick, if I can find it. So I've already filled this with compost, and what I'm going to do is in each one of these little cells, I'm just going to stick my finger in like that. Now you want to plant these seeds as close to the top as you possibly can do. You don't need the compost too so I'm just going to put some more compost in there. The compost wasn't hard enough. So what you want to do is make a slight indentation on the top. That's basically what I'm trying to get to. Right, so just with your finger like that, make a small indentation on the top. And what you're going to do is get some of the seed. As you can see, there's the seed. And just sprinkle a few into the top of each of the cell. Now these don't get planted very deep. The depth of that you plant a seed, as a rule of thumb, the smaller the seed, the shallower it gets planted. So you know, things like, if you imagine beans or you know, sunflower seeds or something like that, you typically plant them probably about 2 or 3 times the size of the seed's depth, if you like. Smaller seeds like this, you literally plant them on the surface. Now I've got probably about 4 to 5 seeds in each one, roughly. Some of them have got slightly more, like that. Now as soon as you've done that, all you need to do is get some dry compost. Now compost that you've had on your surface is ideal for this actually. And what you want to do is make sure you've got no lumps in there at all, and then just sprinkle over the top a very light amount of compost like that. Now give them a very light watering. You don't want to give them too much water. And now they will grow away quite happily. Now Aquilegias are lovely plants. You can get loads of different varieties, and I've got to be honest with you, in the UK, if you collect Aquilegia seeds from any plant and grow them like I'm doing here, you have no idea what colour you're going to get, because there's that many that grow in the wild in the UK and in people's gardens. It's a very popular flower. You can get everything from yellow, white, purple, all sorts of colours in there. Even some sort of orangey sort of colours as well. I've grown these in the past, and you literally never know what you're going to get. So that's Aquilegia. All I need to do now is give that a little bit of water, put it in a warm spot in the greenhouse, and that will they will grow away quite nicely. They're only likely to make small plants this year, and next year they'll grow into a much larger plant with the flowers, which are kind of downward facing. Very beautiful flower. If you've not grown them before, I suggest you do. And as soon as you introduce these into your garden, you've got them for life. They're very much like calendula. They'll self-set everywhere, and they'll always grow where you don't want them to grow, but trust me, they'll grow everywhere. So that's Aquilegia for you. Okay, so it's time to put in the celeriac. Now, you may not have heard of celeriac before, but it's part of the Boliferae family, which is basically the celery family of plants. And in there, the things you've probably heard of, apart from celery, is things like dill, coriander, parsley, things like that. So the leaves are very sort of distinctive. You know, they look like, you know, the sort of the leaves that you'd get on celery and things like that. It's got various other names. It's sometimes called celery root as well, but basically it's a really easy vegetable to grow. Now, celery isn't the easiest thing to grow. I have tried to grow it in the past with varied success, but celeriac is incredibly easy to grow. Quite possibly one of the most ugliest vegetables in the world, to be honest with you. But it's, as I say, it's easy to grow, and the good thing about celeriac is it'll grow in the summer, in the spring and the summer, and then these sort of roots, if you like, it's almost like a turnip. It'll actually grow through the winter, so you can crop these from sort of, I don't know what it says on the back of here. You can harvest them from kind of September, October time, right the way through till pretty much now. It says on here October to December, but I've most certainly cropped this before that. I've cropped it in September, and basically I cropped one not long ago, back in March. So you know, they are, you know, for 6 months of the year you can crop these, and it's the type of vegetable which is about when other vegetables aren't. So you know, if you want something nice and fresh in your garden at all times, celeriac is one of the things to go for. Right, so all you need to do, it's very easy to grow. Now the seeds are, as you can imagine, I don't know if you've ever seen sort of coriander seeds or celery seeds, but basically they're almost the same as you'd expect because they're the same family. So, right, all you need to do is put some compost in like that. You don't need it massively deep. Now these germinate at around between 15 and 20 degrees, so you know, during the day, at this time of year, these most certainly should germinate quite well. What you need to do though is sow them quite shallowly. You don't want too much compost on the top, so you need to make sure there's plenty underneath to hold the moisture, because what you do need to do is keep the seeds moist. That's quite important, and that's the difficult bit with this, because you've not got a lot of compost on the top of them, so you need to make sure that they're kept moist at all time. So now I've done that, I'm going to just very quickly push the compost down on a bit of wood, which just about fits in here, like that. So that's nice and level, as you can see, nice and level and flat, and it's been pushed down. Just make sure it's a little bit firmer, just do it that way. Right, so as soon as I show you the seeds, you'll probably recognise the seeds. You don't get too many here, but these do germinate really well. You normally get a high germination rate as long as you keep the compost moist. Okay, so to look at the seed, the seed's going to be very much like celery seed or sort of coriander seed, but obviously it's slightly smaller. But there's the seed. It's quite small, and as I've said in the past, you know, if the seed is small, that typically means that when you put it in, you know, you don't need much covering it. You know, that's pretty much it gives you an idea of how deep it should be. Now, it's not the easiest seed to sow evenly. What you want to try and do is get them as far apart as you possibly can. I've probably put best part of 60-70 seeds in there, to be honest with you, and pretty much every one of them will germinate. So if you've not seen celeriac before, I'm sure you've eaten it in other things and not sort of realise it. So what is celeriac good for? Well, it's most famous for goulash, and basically anything like that, sort of stews and things. You know, you can, you know, where you'd put celery, it's exactly the same thing, but obviously this is more like a turnip. So you can basically take that, chop it all up, shred it, do whatever you want to it, and you can put it in stews, you can make soups out of it, and it's got that sort of distinctive celery taste to it, but the taste of celeriac is stronger than celery, and it's got more of a sort of an earthy flavour to it as well. And to be honest with you, I actually prefer the taste of celeriac to celery, but it's, you know, it's a similar kind of flavour. It's obviously nothing like coriander or dill or anything like that. You know, it's just quite sort of, you can tell it's kind of similar, but it is a different taste. It is most certainly like celery, which I guess it's where it gets the name from. You know, the root celery. But the advantage of celeriac is it gives you a good meaty vegetable which will last through the winter. You know, and you can harvest it, as I say, from sort of September right the way through to March of the following year. And as soon as you get them going, you know, they are easy to to grow. All you need to do is plant them out into the garden in a row, and really they don't take a lot of maintenance at all. You know, basically just put the seeds in as I've shown you here. Give them a little bit of water. Put a piece of glass over that if it's not too warm, and then in a few weeks' time, when they've grown, it comes up like cress. Lots of little plants. As soon as they're big enough to handle, you prick them out into pots, kind of like that. You know, I could do with a lot of other things. Grow them on until they're, you know, sort of reasonable sized plants. Then you can plant them out into the garden, and you can be enjoying these. Now, this is most certainly one vegetable it's worth growing, because celeriac in the shops isn't that common, and the shops that do stock it, it's reasonably expensive to buy. So out of all the vegetables that you grow, this is one which is a nice vegetable, and it's also expensive to buy in the shop. So it's definitely, from a financial point of view, it's worth growing it in the garden, and it will also give you you know, a good crop which will, you know, last you through the winter. It is quite possibly the most ugliest vegetable in the world. It looks, that doesn't really give it justice really, but that's kind of what it looks like, with kind of leaves coming out the top. Obviously, if you think of fennel's typically like a bulb with leaves going off at like a fan shape. This is more of a sort of turnip type shape. It's round with the leaves only coming out to the top of it, like a tuft of leaves coming out the top. But you know, they are nice vegetables, and if you've not grown these before, this is definitely a vegetable to try. And you know, as I say, you can make so many things with them. You can make soups, goulashes, stews, all, you know, all that kind of thing. And you can also shred it and actually eat it raw like you would do with celery. Obviously, you can also eat the leaves as well. You know, you can make you know, stock or whatever with the leaves, or you can chop the leaves up and put those in the stew as well. So there's nothing wrong with eating the leaves, but obviously it's the root which is the main part that you eat. But anyway, that's what we need to be doing at this time of year for celeriac. Okay, so I don't know if you can remember or not, but at the sort of back end of last year we saved some of the hollyhock seeds, and this is what hollyhock seeds look like. It's these nice little kind of disc shaped seeds. I'll show you some. There you go, there's 3 or 4 there. Now these are taken off the plant which is actually growing out there. Hollyhocks by right are biennial, which basically means 1 year they'll grow, and then the next year they'll sort of grow even further, send up the flower shoot and flower, then the plant will die basically. So it basically grows for 2 years. First year it's developing the actual plant and the roots. Second year it flowers, then it dies. Having said that, I've had hollyhock plants for considerably more than 2 years, maybe 5, 6, 7 years, and if you look after them, they will actually be more than 2 years. Particularly if you cut the flower shoot off just after it's finished flowering, because you can kind of stop basically make the plant believe that it's not generated any seed, even though it has. But anyway, again, in exactly the same way, hollyhock seeds do go a little bit deeper than others that I've just been showing you. But basically what you need to do is just, with some little cells like this, obviously the first year you just want to get them going. So it'll probably end up at the end of the year being a plant about this big, about kind of 5 or 6 inches high, about that wide. And then next year, that's when it'll really come into its own. So, if you don't know what hollyhocks look like, I'll probably put a picture on this video anyway, but they're kind of a little bit like Lavatirias, to be honest with you. Right, so all I'm going to do is stick my fingers in again, making a hole around ½ an inch or so deep, like that. in these cells. Now, what you want to do is put one seed in each. You don't want any more than one seed, and hopefully they'll germinate away quite well. You want to look for seeds that are nice and fat. What you don't want are any seeds that, if you've saved your own seed, what you don't want are any seeds that look thin or have got any fungus on them. Basically, obviously you can keep them as dry, you know, do your best to keep them dry, but it doesn't always work over the winter. You want a nice fat seed, so if you squeeze the seed gently between your fingers, you know, there should feel like there's something there. If it just feels like there's nothing inside the seed, most likely isn't. Excuse me. Right, as soon as you've got one in each of the cells, and I'm nearly there, all you've got to do then is give these a good watering and just leave them to grow. Again, they grow quite well in the British weather, and if you put these in now in a greenhouse, they'll definitely very quickly germinate away. Now these are, if I believe, these are actually white ones. I've actually got a plant in the front garden with black on, so I'll be growing some black ones as well, but it's exactly the same thing. So all I need to do, put a little bit of compost over the top. You don't want too much. You're ending up with probably about, I don't know, up to kind of 1/4 of an inch or so of compost on the top, 6mm, like that. Just push them down. What you want to make sure of is that the seed is in compost. The seed and the compost are in contact with each other. Right, label that up, give it a bit of water, keep it nice and warm, and they should be growing away. And you should see some signs within a couple of weeks that they're growing. If they don't show any signs within 3 weeks, the likelihood is that your seed hasn't been any good. You can try and sow some more, or go and buy some seed if you've saved your own. But if you haven't seen anything within 3 weeks, I'd say, and the temperature in the greenhouse is around sort of 18, 19, 20 degrees, as it is quite often now in the day, these will most certainly have germinated. If they haven't germinated, the likelihood is that your seed's no good. Okay, just a quick summary of what's been going on in the greenhouse. The broad beans are about to go out, particularly these ones here. I'm going to do, as I've said before, I'm going to dig this piece of ground over here and put them in very shortly. But the ground is really wet. We've had loads more rain. I don't know if you can see over there, all the ground's really wet again. But anyway, in the greenhouse we've had a bit of success this week. The sweet peas have all come up, as you can see. Now, just to prove me wrong, these few at the front here, those 8 at the front there, are these bought sweet peas there, and then obviously these 3 here with these lipstick ones there, and all of those are just about starting to come through, as you can see. But the seeds that I saved from last year, they've pretty much all come up. So there was me a couple of weeks ago saying that if you keep your own seeds, put lots in because the germination is not so good. For some reason this year they're really good. There's loads and loads of them that have come through. So the sweet peas are doing really well. These are this is the cauliflower, just started to come through, as you can see. So there's enough there for me to be getting on with. There are some more seeds in here, I don't know if you can see, but they are starting to come through. The tomato plants, nothing as of yet. I don't really think it's been warm enough yet, to be honest with you. But there's just one there. There's a seed. I don't know if you can see it right in the middle of the screen now. It obviously just showed a little root on it, so they're about to start. But the tomatoes haven't come through yet. These are the Celeriac. I've just put them in a bag just to sort of keep them a little bit warmer. So they're sort of on the way. The broad beans, as I say, they're going to go out before very much longer, and these ones at the back. The concern that I've got with these ones at the back is some of the flowers have already fell off, and the concern I've got is I've got no insects inside the greenhouse to pollinate them. Having said that, I've just spotted there's actually some green fly on there. The whole point in growing, I've not really touched on this before, but the whole point in growing broad beans this early is to avoid the black fly. Aphids absolutely love broad beans, and given a chance, they'll absolutely you know, destroy a crop of broad beans. So what you typically do is grow them early in the year so that you crop off them, or at least the flowers are done before the black fly get a chance to you know, sort of pollinate, you know, sort of get in there and populate the plants. But as you can see, I have got some, and there's some in there. I don't know if you can see just underneath that leaf there, that petal, sorry. There's actually a few aphids on there already. I might need to spray them, I'm not quite sure. But anyway, the concern I've got is there's no insects to pollinate the flowers, so you know, some of the flowers have already started to drop off. Look. Anyway, that's the broad beans. The Calabrese, as you can see, is doing really well. They're looking a little bit floppy at the moment, but nevertheless they're growing quite strongly, and they'll be ready in a few weeks to go out into the main allotment as soon as I'm able to dig the ground. Right, out here I've made a bit of progress. I don't know if you can see, but I've swapped over these slabs here, just to make up the path there. Obviously, when I move the greenhouse over, I'll move these slabs round. So I've managed to get all that all nice and level out. I put some bricks in where the spaces are. Right, and in the second greenhouse, what we've got in here is that's some of the kale there that's sort of carrying on growing, which are basically spares. Some more of the broad beans. As you can see, the alpine strawberries are really starting to come through now. Now, from the flowers that I put in here, so we've got hollyhocks in here, and we've got Aquilegia in there, and we've got asparagus plants in there. None of those have come up yet, obviously. The sunflowers, nothing as of yet. As I say, it's not really been that warm. The onions here, as you can see there, they've started to recover. As in, they're all, you know, sort of upright, and they're obviously starting to grow now. The kale plants, these are the ones that we pricked out last week. Obviously, they're growing on quite nicely. The dahlias and the Don Pedro planter, there's no signs of life yet. I have been watering those just a little teeny bit every other day or so. As you can see there, they're not starting to shoot yet. Now, in the next week or so, it's reported that the weather's going to improve, and we're going to have potentially 20 degrees one of the days next week. So all being well, that should really spurt on the growth of these. So I'm hoping that I'll start to see some life out of these in the next week or two. Right, moving over here, the spinach, as you can see, is all starting to come up. So these are all the little spinach seedlings. Now, as soon as they get to, I'd say probably about 3 to 4 inches high, they'll be just about ready to go outside into one of the tunnels. These are the spring onions, so they're growing quite nicely. What I'll do is obviously I'll put those outside. They're likely to go in this piece of ground here as well. I'm going to make a row in there, and I'll cover those with plastic just to give them a bit of protection. These are the strawberry plants we potted up from last year. There's a bit of weed starting to come through on some of them, but as you can see, the plants are doing really nicely now. Nice, healthy little strawberry plants, and they'll be good to go into the row. These are the in here we've got the Don Pedro planter seeds. Nothing's showing as of yet, but I'm hoping to see something there in the next couple of weeks again. Fuchsia, this is the one we got out the back here. This is the hardy fuchsia. As you can see, that's really starting to sort of come through, throwing some shoots out from the bottom. I've not seen any growth on the actual stems of the original plant yet, but I wouldn't suggest you cut those off yet. Wait till at least another 3 or 4 weeks before you sort of decide to take all that off and just let it grow from the bottom. So that's what the greenhouses look like at the moment. Unfortunately, there's not been much going on outside because the weather's been shocking. Really, it's the weather's just been that wet. We've just not been able to get onto the plots at all. But things are starting to come out. As you can see, the raspberries are starting to grow. Strawberry plants outside are just about starting to come, and so I do need to get in there and do a bit of weeding, but that's what the plot looks like at the moment. So I hope this episode was some use to you. Please don't hesitate to put any comments or questions you got below, and I'll always get back to you, and I'll see you on the next episode of Jim's Allotment Garden.